up? Corey Lindner in the house. Thank you so much for coming on the Refined Strength podcast. Corey, I have known you really, I don't know how long, but just like kind of, we've seen each other at shows here and there. Like you
Yeah.
live in Idaho, right?
Yep.
Or do you still live in Idaho?
Yeah. Still in Idaho.
Okay, cool. And we both have worked for the Craigs in some capacity. So tell the listeners who you are and like describe what it is you do.
All right. Well, my name's Corey. Obviously, thanks for the intro. I'm happy to be on this podcast. We planned this for a few months now, so it's finally here, and we're finally doing it. So that's cool. Yeah, like you said, we've known each other for years in the industry, going back to just working at shows to you DJing at shows, and all the way to some of the Vegas shows that we see each other at. But for myself, my career started back when I competed in a handful of shows back from 2016 to 2018 was my last show. Then I was in prep in 2020 to try to take it to the next level, and ended up shattering my kneecap. So that is what I guess I'm kind of making a big summary here, and we'll catch up to today. But that's kind of what ended me being a competitor in any capacity, and also ended up medically retiring me from the fire department, which all ties into me going full time into coaching and training. So at
Okay.
that time in my life, I was a full time firefighter, and I was just doing training a handful of people on the side. Like I had a couple lifestyle clients, I had some like firefighter boot camp type clients, and I'd only had a handful of competitors, and I was like, well, I guess the best way to get good at something is just to be completely thrown into it. So here we go. And yeah, fast forward now for about 7 years now, 6 years now, I've been full time coaching athletes, training athletes, and it's actually geared more now towards I'm doing full time training, and I think that's something that we'll get more into talking about, I'm sure, in a bit. But I don't do any prep coaching anymore. Everything is all training capacity. So I have a lot of mainly females when it comes to bikini, figure, and wellness. I don't know how it really ended up being my niche, but it did. And I don't think there's a single bikini coach in our industry that I don't have at least a couple of clients that I train and share with, and a lot of people refer out their clients to me for training programming or in-person training. I did a training tour at the beginning of this year where I went to a handful of states and was training people in person. So that that's just a big summary of the last like 10 years of my life. All just kind of jumbled into one, but we could break down whatever you want. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So I don't think I even knew that you did any firefighting until like more or less recently, around the time when I reached out about the podcast. Do you still work for the fire department at all?
yeah, so I'm obviously no longer operations firefighter. So I shattered my kneecap on a motorcycle into dozens of pieces. So the entire kneecap's now sutured together and held together by wire. So I couldn't be cleared medically to be on the truck anymore. So I lived in Vegas at that time. And now I moved up to Idaho 2 years ago. And since moving there, the city offered me a job to run the fire academy.
Oh,
So
cool.
a couple days a week, I'm the director of the fire academy whenever there's an academy going on.
Okay, great. And I bet
Yeah.
that kind of like is a nice way of like diversifying your training and your coaching too,
Yeah,
because you
100%, 100%.
obviously any firefighter I know has like some sort of like connection to the fire department even after they leave. So I bet that's kind
Yeah.
of a nice thing to have still, in addition to what you're building with training.
Yeah, definitely. And it's nice too on the mental side of things. Like I joined the military a day after high school at 17, and from that moment on, there was never a time that I wasn't either military or firefighter until the day I broke my knee. And it was like all of a sudden all of that ended and my only thing I could do was coach people, and it was like fuck, like the mental strain on that was like 10 years of doing nothing but building up certifications for EMT and firefighting and all this stuff, and like all just goes to waste in a sense. So it's cool to be able to be a part of the instructor and academy side of it.
Yeah. Would you say that you had like kind of an identity crisis or loss at all when that happened and you saw all of that kind of flash away?
Yeah, like at first it was more of the denial. Like I remember I was still in the hospital bed like 2 days after surgery. And I was texting my fire chief and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll be back on light duty. I can come like work dispatch in a couple weeks and I'll be back at it." And a
Yeah.
couple weeks went by and I was still like my leg brace was a stiff leg, full leg brace for 3 months in a wheelchair before they could even start to turn the dial to let me have some like flexion in my knee. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah. Do
there's no
not.
way I
Yeah.
can do. Yeah, I was like, I can't even do light duty. Like, I can't even do light duty. I can't sit comfortably in a car. So
Yeah.
that ended up way more time passed. It ended up being a full year before I was like walking decently with a crutch. So it was a long period of time. And at that point, it was just an entire year of being on like donated sick time and vacation time because I obviously ran out at that point, and I was like, it's just time to call it. Like, I'm never going to be medically cleared. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah.
hard to think about. Like you have that whole year to really think about like, well, what am I gonna do? Like that's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
physical, and being physically active and having a labor intensive job is just like such a big part of you and what you know
Yep.
how to do.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
in terms of training and getting into a place of like coaching and now transitioning fully into training, what kind of made you decide to make that switch from coaching, training in the gym, just being kind of a personal trainer and coach into such a niche of training mostly female competitive athletes? Hold on.
There we go. I had a call that I declined, and then it gave me a 5 second countdown. So,
Oh, that's good.
um, yeah. So I heard everything you said. So, yeah. So I went full time into coaching, which when I was doing it part time, I started out with a couple local people that wanted to do like a local show, trained them for free for like a year, and just like really learned the coaching side of things. Sergio was my first coach, Sergio Oliva. So he was
Okay.
my first coach for the first show I ever did, or second show I ever did. I was self-coached for my first show, didn't have a fucking clue what I was doing. So I got him for my second show. And that taught me a lot, along with coaching up. I had one female, one male, and I coached them up for free just to like learn coaching, and before I like dove into it. And then the knee break happened that threw me completely into it. And so I did about 4, 5 years of full time coaching athletes, couple figure pro cards, couple good national placings with clients, and I started to learn through that whole process. My favorite part of coaching was developing the training programs, which is also kind of ties into where my niche fell more on the female side of things because a lot of men, some people are going to come at me for this, but a lot of males get feedback where it's like,
Okay, let it
come in bigger, come in harder. That's it. Like that's men. Like you're an open bodybuilder, it's coming bigger or
Yeah.
coming harder. You weren't conditioned enough. You need your quads up, whatever it may be. When it comes to bikini figure, as you know, wellness, it's very detail feedback. It's you need to bring your glutes up, but don't let your quads grow anymore. That's like big bikini feedback. Like you need to be able to hit this muscle group and bring this up, but this needs to downsize or this needs to stay the same, which is where you get more
Yeah.
detailed with your training programs because it's like, okay, how am I going to grow the glutes, but you don't want to see my quads move at all. And so I started to get more niche with the female side of things and then solely the training side of things because I liked more of that detailed, broken down feedback. And then on top of that, the hands on training portion where it's more intense, more informative, more instructional. And so that ended up becoming more of my niche. And David De Mesquita, Dynamite D. Everyone's listening to this knows who he is. So he took me. Me and him kind of partnered together. He was one of the first prep coaches I like quote unquote partnered with, where he referred off the bat to me like a dozen clients. Like we've known each other. Me and him have known each other for probably 7 years in the industry now, and about 6, 7, 8, probably 8 months ago now, he just gave me a handful of his clients where he was like, I have too big of a prep roster. I need someone I can trust where you're going to take on their training. I want them to send you training videos where if you can't be in person, you need to give them instructional feedback in these videos. I don't have time for it, and I love how you write your training programming. And I was like, all right. And so that started to like kind of tumbleweed into, I have a couple girls from Team Atlas. I have a couple from Paul. I have a dozen from David. I now have clients from pretty much every one of those coaches in the industry. And it just built from there to now my roster is very, very large and it's all training. And it's like, that's my favorite part of this industry. So, and I make jokes about it all the time to some of the coaches because some of these coaches kind of have their own like rivalries with each other. Like they're all very top name Olympia level coaches and they have rivalries within. We don't need to go into names, but it's always funny to me because I'm like in the mix of it all. And I'm like, I work with you. I work with you. I work with you. Oh, but you don't like you and you don't like this person. And I'm like, I'm just going to wear this person's hat and this person's jacket and this person's shirt, like from every one of your teams. And it always just cracks me up because like always I hear the story of how this coach doesn't like this coach's approach to this and this one doesn't like this, and I'm like, I'm just here to train people, guys. Like I got 5 people from you and 6 people from you. I'm just here to train them. So that stuff always,
The same
yeah,
show.
exactly,
Yeah,
that stuff
same
always
my
makes me laugh.
yeah. Yeah, it is very interesting, just like that rivalry versus
Hmm.
collaboration in our industry. And I'm someone who like I've always David is one that like I've always respected for his just like openness
Yeah,
to educate and like be collaborative with people. And that's a big thing that I look up to in a lot of coaches. Like my own coach, Mark, is the same way. Um, because I think like what people with that rivalry sense of and like way of doing things, it's like it's almost like they think there's not enough for all of us to
yeah,
eat. And that's the thing. It's like there's so many people
yep,
that will coach with
yeah,
you for whatever reason. And at the end of the day, they're not some are going to coach because you're you and you're the big name that you are, or you coach this
yeah.
person so they want to coach with you
Well,
too.
all the way
But
down
most of the
to
time,
some people will coach with someone just because they're the big name in their city. Like you and I might not ever hear
yeah,
about this coach ever because they're from like Wichita, Kansas, and they do the local like Wichita show every year. But that coach makes a living because every single local competitor is with them. But it's someone that we're never even going to know about or
that was
hear
a big
about.
thing. Yeah, I noticed that just like how prevalent that was when I was first starting to compete and I was in Seattle area, Washington. And then when I left, like several years later and went to Texas, I'm in Dallas now. The bodybuilding world is huge
Yeah,
out here.
yeah,
And you know, because you come here for Gasp, I'm sure. But like over there it's just not like that, and so it's dominated by local
yeah,
coaches that, like you said, nobody knows who they
hmm,
are outside of that
yeah,
community. And then I remember even getting a lot of judgment when I first went with a like the first coach I got after my first show, which was
mm,
Paul, and no one knew who he was at the time. It was
yeah,
2016, and they all thought that I was stupid for hiring a local or an online
yeah,
coach. And now look at where he
yeah,
is, you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, and that's I brought up that point just because you brought up how like there's so many of these rivalries because people think there's not enough fish in the sea, and it's like that right there shows you that like you could have 10 personal trainers under one roof of a gym, and most of them are making a living just from the clients they have in that one building. Like there are plenty of fish in the sea for
Absolutely.
there's plenty of fish in the sea for all the prep coaches around. Like people make a living just off the
Yeah.
handful of people they have in their tiny little city. So there's the rivalry of
Yeah.
like I want to get this competitor from this person or I need to have more than this person or this person is going to steal this client. It's like yes, that happens all the time, but it's never really going to hurt anyone. Like stealing a client or however people want to word that, it's never, those rivalries start just thinking it's going to hurt someone's business. And it's like, there's so many fish in the sea for that. And I've noticed what you just said too a lot, being up in Boise now. So I did kind of the opposite of you. I went from living in LA and living in Vegas, like bodybuilding hubs,
Hmm.
to moving to Boise where there's pretty much no like we have two, we have 2 shows a year. The whole year there are 2 shows,
Yeah.
and it's like in
Hmm.
in a, yeah,
Awesome.
kind of a testament to what we were just saying with you having a local coach before was all the coaches in Boise do very well for themselves because all the local competitors want to do those 2 shows. And those shows are spaced really well from the Craigs to where year round someone is in prep. So after each show,
Yeah.
you have like a month off and then you're right back in prep for the next one. So all the local coaches have local clients that are just constantly going to be doing the next show, doing the next show. And even if they don't ever take them to the next level, like there's not many national competitors. I could name all the pros in Boise, like off the top of my head right now. And they're good pros. Like I'm friends with all of them. They're really good. There's just not a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's like when it comes to that
Yeah.
local clientele, there will always be plenty for all the local coaches.
Yeah. Just like there's plenty for
Yeah.
online. So with your niche of specifically training and obviously and also travel training, like you did a training tour, how did you like conceptualize that idea of like traveling around, training people in person for like a, a one-time thing, whether they were your client or not? How did that kind of come about?
So that started with it was shortly after David had pretty much referred and handed me a bunch of his clients for training, and it started going really, really well. And then I had more people reaching out to me. More people noticed that word of mouth referral. Different coaches from different teams started to be like, "Hey, I'm going to send you one or two people." And so that started, and then all of them started going, "Hey, would you ever fly out here? Like, if I like paid for your flight and maybe you got your hotel, like, would you like?" And it started collaborating like that, and I was like, I wonder if I could just reach out to my sponsors and to some of these coaches and be like, "Hey, you throw me like a few $100 to cover some travel, and I will stay a whole weekend with all your clients in one location and just knock them out." Like I went to a body shop in Seattle, and eight. I had 8 people in one day. Had a local videographer that donated his time to me because he was friends with all the clients. Like Tiana, Rhoda drove down from Canada for that day. So I had people like driving from other states because I was in the area. Rhoda drove down from Canada. Bree came from the other, drove like 4 hours through Washington to come for the weekend. And it kind of ended up being like not really a mini seminar, but just hour after hour, a different person from a different city came in for training. And it just kind of took off from there. So the idea kind of conceptualized just because people were reaching out to me that I started programming and giving them feedback through video. And they were like, "I want you in person for a weekend. Like, I want you to come and push me. Like, I'm 8 weeks out of my show or I'm mid off season. I really want this push. I really want you to teach me how to do this in person." And I was like, "Okay, let's make this happen." So I ended up getting
Yeah.
Gasp and Better Bodies got on board and helped me out with some of it. Gaspari Nutrition, that I'm not with anymore, but big props to them. They threw a lot of stuff at me to help me out with that as well. So I ended up going just on this little tour of the Northwest. Took it a little bit to the East Coast and Texas, and currently I'm not on the tour anymore because I've been at so many shows the last few months. That's where all my travel has been. But yeah, we ended up hitting a handful of states, a handful of cities, and I think I had about 11 or 12 different national level and pros just throughout from multiple divisions. And it was really, really a fun time.
Yeah, I bet that was really gratifying too, just to like be able to add that value to people's preps, their off
Yeah.
seasons. I think a big thing that's coming back more or less, like maybe not coming back, I don't know what the right word for it is, but like so many people have online
Hmm.
coaches. Like that's more or less the norm now for the most
Yeah.
part for high level competitors that are going to national shows, being a pro, getting into the pro levels of things. And I feel like it's kind of the the momentum is going more towards the community aspect of bodybuilding
Yeah.
and the engagement and the like relationships that we can build within bodybuilding. And I love seeing like things like that, like you being just, going from being just a trainer or a coach and training just people in person to now like seeing how can you flip the narrative of that and make something a demand, like that you created
Yeah.
a demand for
Yeah.
that. How do you feel like that has shaped how do you feel like that will continue for yourself, or how do you want to see it continue?
I just love, and I don't want to say it's like an egotistical way, but I love being the guy that's trusted by all the coaches. Because a lot, like we talked about, a lot of the coaches
Yeah.
don't like each other. And so when it comes to training, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying his name on here about it, but like Shane Hughley, very, very, very tight ship he runs. It's like him and his wife do everything,
Mm.
and and for good reason. They have, God, he's turned more people pro than anyone in the industry by 100 pro cards. Like he's at like 300 plus.
Yeah,
Incredible
yeah.
team. And it's because he runs such a tight ship, and he only has like one or two posing coaches that he allows his competitors to use. And he's told me and a couple of our clients multiple times that I am the only trainer that he lets people use. And that's how, and he has, God, I don't even know
That's
how
great.
many clients. And so that's what I like it. That's what like I see the future of me being, of like the training is I have a couple people from almost every coach, and I want to just keep growing from there. I want these clients to continue going back to their coach and being like, Corey flew out and trained me this weekend, and that was incredible. And I feel like that's going to really slingshot me into doing better this next off season, or really help me with this next prep and keeping my intensity up, or learning this angle, this tempo, this exercise. So I like it's kind of like a mixture of with like how I love the Fire Academy so much. I love the instructional and teaching side of things mixed with the intensity. So it's not all, I'm not a big person that's all about these like TikTok videos we see of the single arm lat pull down and going like a 7 second tempo and really feeling this squeeze. And I'm like,
Target the lower
yes,
lat.
yes. I'm
Yeah.
like, where's the intensity in there? Like, where's the intensity? Where's the weight? Like that stuff can come after. Get the movement down. Get like know what intensity is, know what training hard is, and then figure out how to target it for yourself. And that's where I think we have a big there's just a big divide and barrier right now. And like, there's that Branch Warren style of training. That's like one end of the spectrum. And then there's like the TikTok, like millennial side of things where it's like this like stupidly over scienced, overly controlled. And I feel like I bring a really,
The opposite
yes,
side.
exactly. I feel like I just bring a really good like
Yeah.
midpoint to that. And also helping people understand where your training might change throughout different phases of the year. Like once you hit that certain point in prep, and you're going to start to experience more loss in strength. And once that happens is when I do want to get more into that more optimal style of training, because I don't want to see, and I'll use this because I have so many people that do hip thrusts. Use a hip thrust for an example, and I was just talking to someone just before I got on this with you. She's 4 weeks out of doing I don't remember what national show is coming up, but she's 4 weeks out. And
USA.
yeah, yes, USA's. So she's 4 weeks out of USA's, and she messaged me today and was talking to me about how I feel like I'm starting to really engage my quads too much. I'm starting to jerk my neck back a lot because I'm really trying to thrust this weight up. And I'm like, well, we hit the point now where your training intensity can stay optimized, but you're going to need to bring the weight down. And it's just helping them understand that difference in this isn't off season. This isn't peak where you feel that incredible 10 to 12 weeks out where the drugs are good, the food is still good, like everything is great. You're at 4 weeks out. Like training optimization is going to come down a little bit. So to keep it optimized, we need to alter this, change this, do this. And there's just certain things where that's where I like that instructional side of things a lot.
Yeah. Well, optimal changes. And I think that's what, like you said, there's a divide between the people that want to like stay optimal, stay safe no matter what. And then there's the people that want to focus, want to just like go
Yeah.
hard, like fucking crazy intensity all the
Yeah.
time, no matter what. And like you said, like it really depends on the season, but also like the level of the competitor. You
Yeah.
get a first time competitor, most of them don't know how to
Yeah.
train. And a lot of them are looking at Miss Bikini Olympia and looking at how she trains. But that's the thing, is like Miss Bikini Olympia has to stay the same.
Yes. Yep.
She's not training with a ton
Yeah.
of intensity usually. Like I know personally, Daraja is one of my good friends, and she was top 4 at the Olympia a couple years ago. She has to train so specifically,
Yeah.
right? And she only really needs to train 3 days a
Yep.
week because she can't grow her shoulders or her lats too much. She can't grow her quads too much. And so with the problem with looking at the people that are the top in the sport is that they're there because of everything they did to get there, and how they're training now is a lot different from how they trained to build up that
Exactly.
muscle.
Exactly. Yeah. And I loved how you said that too. There's a big difference in what optimal means. Like every stage of someone's career has a different optimal. And using a brand new novice competitor all the way to Miss Olympia and everything in between has a different optimal. Every single one. And that doesn't just change with how you're lifting, but it also changes what you're lifting. Because once you hit that
Yeah.
national level, like you're a decent national competitor and above, your feedback is going to become more and more minute. It's going to be more of your delts are on the brink of getting too big, but we need more glute. Whereas that true novice competitor is going to be told, you weren't lean enough and you need more density all over. And it's a lot, and that's a completely different training style. It's completely different prep coach side of things. So everyone's optimal is different.
Yeah, absolutely. With those minute changes, I think a big thing too that some competitors, but also even coaches, misunderstand is like if someone says like you know your delts are a little too big, the answer might not be to
Stop.
stop
Yeah.
training delts. It might just be to like train them differently or not pump them up so
Yeah.
hard or not fill out so much for peak
Yep.
week. And so I think that's a big thing too. Do you work with a lot of clients on like specifically their peaking and pumping up strategies and stuff like
Yeah.
that?
So that's a big thing I've noticed with some. I don't even want to say just prep coaches, just some people's mistakes when it comes to peak week and the day of the show is I've had people where I didn't even take them on as a competitor or as a client because the next week they had a show and I just gave them like a small bit of advice. And this one girl was told that her delts were too big in wellness in that it wasn't creating that proper proportion of disproportion for wellness. And all I told her was, I was like, what did you do backstage? Like, how did your coach feed you up? What did you do? And she was like, oh, this much salt, and then I did this for pumping up backstage. And she showed me, and I was like, next show, oops, are you still there? Okay,
Yeah.
good. I was like, next show, just don't pump up your delts backstage. Because I saw like I was like, you don't need to change anything else. Like, just don't. Because her shoulders, you could see in her stage photos and in her posing routine how like stiff it was. You could tell it was full. It was blood flow. You could see how pumped it was. And then she showed me some tracking pictures throughout peak week, like morning fasted, and I was like, that's what you need to bring to the. I was like, that's what you need to bring to the stage. That's not like that's perfect. You don't need to pump up your upper body. Just do what you did for your lower and bring that on stage, and you're solid. And the next week, her feedback was no longer her delts. So it was like it's something as simple as that. I feel like it could be.
Yeah. And posing too is a big part of that. Like with bikini and wellness, like there is such a um, different approach than you would have with figure or women's physique or a men's division. Like you're not flexing every single thing that you have.
Yes.
You're trying to just bridge that gap and have like a balance of your muscularity and your leanness and things like
Yep.
that. Because yeah, you might see the person that wins a national show and see how hard they were up top or how lean they look up top, but they didn't win because of that. They won because of their
Yeah.
glutes.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
it just so happens that they were also pretty lean up top and they happened to have the like a good pump in their delts. But if they had the best glutes or they had the best overall look, that's why
Yeah.
they won.
Exactly.
And I think at the pro level, that's where you get a little bit more of that super finite details because so many of the back shots look almost
Yeah.
identical. And so that's when they're looking at other things and having you zoom in on certain areas.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. Is it gonna stop this if I minimize it really quick? It keeps telling me that I need to change the Wi-Fi. Let me see. I think we should be good. Hang on one sec.
I don't think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
can you still hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. I just can't see you, but I can still hear you. Let me change this Wi-Fi over really quick. I'm in the airport. We're headed to the Euro Muscle Show today. We're going to Amsterdam.
Oh
Yeah, so
shit.
that's where.
You and
Yeah,
Brittany?
that's where I'm at right now. We're in the Amex Lounge, just hanging out, and I was like, I got a podcast to go hop on. I'll
I
be
was
back.
wondering, like he must be in a diner or
Yeah,
something.
it's literally where we're at. So.
Well, thank you for taking the time to
Oh
do
yeah,
this and you're in the
I when
airport.
I saw my calendar that I had this with you today, I was like, oh, that's perfect timing. So we have a 7 hour layover. So
Oh, kill the time.
there we go.
So that kind of oh yeah, I'll wait until you
Boom.
come back on.
I'm back. We're good.
So that kind of brings me to the next question. So you are Brittany's right hand
Yep.
man, right? Brittany
Yep.
Hamilton is a very high level, amazing competitor and person. How has being with her at that top level, at shows, leading up to shows, taking over her training, how has that evolved, if any, if at all, your training style and just your understanding of the sport?
Yeah. So when it comes to her, she's pretty much the highest level. She's the highest level bikini competitor I have. So I don't know if you know Natasha. You might know Natasha, PA. Yeah, so she just qualified for the Olympia a couple weeks ago. So she's one of my wellness training clients. On the bikini side, Brittany is full time my highest level client. And so I have learned a lot about more of like we talked about, that fine, minute, detailed work. Because her critique has always been, and it's a genetic structure thing with her, is that her shoulders are very dominant. And so they told her in bikini, if she wants to really bring that winning hourglass shape at the top pro level, is she needs to bring up her lower body in terms of her quad size without letting her hamstrings grow too much, because then that's going to get rid of that side glute detail, because the hamstring is going to become too muscular into the side glute, and then without growing the glutes too much more. So she had very, very like detailed feedback that she came into this training season with. And the main
Yeah.
basis of it was grow your quads a little bit, bring the shoulders down. But with that just comes a lot, because if the quads come up, that's just the judges essentially assuming that if her quads came up, it's going to look more balanced. But if the quads come up, then you also have to take into account, what is that going to do when you're hitting your back pose and you have that quad sweep flaring out too much? What's that going to do in your front pose when it comes to your quad being more full, and it may be taking away from that 3D look of how big that side glute looks? And so every single show we had to change a little bit, optimize this. Paul brings her in really, really well when it comes to the peaking side of things. Every show there's been no issue on the conditioning side, how lean she is, filling out properly. So it really is with her just strictly a musculature thing, and bringing in that right amount of pop in every area. And we've got it nailed all the way down to where she did Miami a few weeks ago, and Tyler and Edela were the head judges there, and both of them told us backstage, "You guys finally nailed this. Like, you're down in size to what we want to see. The shoulders are no longer like where our eye is drawn to first. We see nothing but hourglass shape now." They're like, "Just keep bringing this and keep refining it a bit. Like, you could have been a little bit tighter in the glutes." And I was like, "Yeah, we could have been tighter in the glutes. It's because we're bringing everything down like they requested, and so now it needs to pop a little more again." So, and then on Brittany's side of things is it's the bikini division, and she's structurally bigger than everyone. She's like Valeria.
Yeah.
She's from overseas, James's client, and they just genetically have that incredible like S curve frame and figure, but they're bigger than everyone on stage. So we're going to Amsterdam for this weekend because she talked with JM and with Tyler and with a couple other judges, and they were like, Becky said it as well. It was like, you'd have a really good shot overseas because they're those just structurally bigger girls. It's all the judges have to look at, and you fit in really well, and you look the best with that structure. And so we're kind of this weekend she's kind of bringing back her Wasatch look, which was where she got second to Amy at the beginning of the season. Um,
That's where she was a little too
Too
big.
big, but bringing that look, but 9 pounds down. So she's
Yeah,
not,
that would
yeah.
be
She's down about 8.5 pounds from that show. And so we're bringing that with her refined posing and then just what they want to see. So bringing back that overall fullness and just like big posing, but 9 pounds down, fitting that like actual more petite hourglass frame on her. So it should be a really good show this weekend.
yeah, it should be. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So good for you. That's really cool. And good for
Yeah.
Brittany if she's
Yeah.
around.
She's
Like,
around the corner.
fucking killing
Yeah.
it, girl. So what do you feel like, and we kind of touched this on this already, what do you feel like is something that the coaches who are designing their training for their clients at the high level, like at Brittany's level, what do you, or maybe at like a high level on the national stage, what do you feel like is the biggest thing that they're missing from their training?
Time. And everyone's gonna craft me with the pitchforks to this one too. I don't think there's any coaches that program training improperly. I just don't think that there's any coaches that offer the level of, let's say, two things: the level of detail when it's needed, like super strict detail. Like some of my programs have sub bullets after sub bullets because I want this foot positioning, I want this tempo, I want this, and this. Versus some of it's very basic, where I'm like, yeah, you're a novice level competitor. I just need you to grow. You don't need to, like, we're going to go down to the basics. I don't need to do sub bullet after sub bullet for you. So when it comes to those higher level coaches with their higher level athletes, I don't think that they have the time to one, do those detailed programming, and two, the time to check on that detail, which is a big one, which is why David came to me originally. Because I wake up every single morning with 20, 25 different texts on WhatsApp of videos that I need to watch because this person's wondering if they're doing their cable kickback properly. And I'm like, a prep
Yeah.
coach with, let's use Paul for example, a prep coach that has 200 plus clients at really good levels, like all the way from true novice to fourth place at the Olympia. They don't have the time to sit there and scroll every single video of someone's training that they just wrote a program for, and then also get to their 200 athlete check-ins that they have to do, and make all of those athletes feel like individuals. Like, he doesn't want those athletes to feel like they're just a number on paper. He doesn't want to go, like, Paul does video check-ins with people, like, you know that. Like, he'll hop on there and he'll do like a video recording of himself talking into detail about what he wants to see. So I don't know coaches that are at that level that are going to have the time necessarily to do that same exact thing in a detailed way with training on top of the prep. So that's what I think
Yeah.
is lacking the
I
most.
agree. And honestly, that's a big part of why I started my own coaching business because I was basically at this hard point in my career of needing to make more money if I wanted to
Mhm.
scale. And like, because at the end of the day, I love coaching. If I could do it for free, I would, but I can't. So, um, I've been reviewing videos as part of my training and my services for since like just a little bit before, like in 2021 or something, or 2022. And then I hired my coach, Mark, who also does that. And the reason I started was because I had this girl, I had been working with her for 6 months. We were in a surplus. She was just not creating the shape that I knew she could create with like the program, the food, everything. Like she was a really good coachable
Mhm.
client for the most part. And I was one day I was just like, you know what? Send me some videos of your leg
Yeah.
day exercises. I want to see how you're doing this because she also had a home gym and it was really outfitted, but it was a home gym, right? So she also doesn't have anyone else to look
Yeah.
at training. She was doing quarter squats. That was
Yeah.
it. Like she was not moving more than 4 inches in her
Yeah.
squat. And I was like, oh my God, this has been happening for 6 months. And I felt so bad because like that was on
Mhm.
me for not inspecting what I expected. And so like from that point on, I started making it a requirement, send me 3 videos a week and, of things that you really want to work on, things that you're having trouble with or have pain
Yeah.
with or whatever. And that has definitely been a big thing because I know not a lot of
Yeah.
coaches do that, but you're right. Like it takes fucking
Yeah.
time. I have 10 plus messages
Yeah.
on my phone right now that I
But
need
I
to
see.
get
I
to.
love hearing
And
that because I think that that's a way, and I'll always like give props to prep coaches. Like even if it like if it doesn't if even if I don't get the business of being able to train the person, it's like I love seeing that because a lot of prep coaches could simply implement something where in the very beginning you set the tone with a client of I want you to send me one exercise from leg day that you don't think you're pushing yourself hard enough, or that you don't feel it how you think you should be feeling it, or if you don't think you're doing it right. And they pick the video, and then you see the video, you see they're doing it right or wrong, you fix it, and then now you say it again. Okay, now I want you to pick a different exercise. And eventually, after like 6 months, you've hit every single exercise, but it's not overloading the prep coach to where you're getting 10 videos every single day from this one person. So there's ways to implement it
yeah.
where it can be time saving for you, but also be beneficial for them. I just don't think that many coaches don't do it. So
Well, yeah, and like literally, I was told that like, wow, that probably takes a lot of time. I don't think you should do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
When I told my boss that I was having clients send me
hmm,
videos, and I was like, huh, I
yeah,
disagree. So
yeah,
I'm just gonna keep doing
yeah,
it. But I think it's a big, and I'm sure this is true for you for like the people that you program for remotely and maybe train in person every once in a while. Is like that level of specificity and detail in training instruction and like them seeing the investment from you, I feel like, at least in my experience, like it creates more accountability in
Yeah.
them for themselves.
Yes.
So like
100%.
they might not send you every single exercise to you, but they're videoing themselves a lot of the time or watching themselves or whatever, and they're like, I know Corey would tell me this if he watched this
Yeah.
video. So I'm not even gonna bother sending
Yeah.
it to him, and I'm
And
just
I
gonna be
I
better.
have two options that I tell everyone up front. It's in my like mini questionnaire where I like ask them if they have any injuries, stuff like that. And I always put in there, once you get programming, you have two options when it comes to my feedback. You can overload me for a few weeks and send me every single top set from every single day. So then at the end of that week, you're going to get all my responses. And then the following week, you're resending me all those videos with the feedback I gave you. So that by the third week, we've hit everything. And now we're just like touching on the little things that you might not be like, maybe this one exercise out of six on your leg day wasn't what I wanted to see. Now you just have one video to send me. Most people choose the
Yeah.
option of sending me 1 to 2 exercises a day over the period of like 3 months. Because then, like they do, let's say it's a hamstring curl and a an RDL. They're sending me those on Monday. Then the following week they hit them again with my feedback, and then the third week they're fixing like any other detail I said on those. Now they move to the next exercise and they'll send videos of that exercise. And so after like three
Like
months,
a
yeah,
rotation.
after like 3 months, we've ended up hitting everything. That's what most people do. I do have some people who just send
Yeah.
every video every single day, and there's this one girl I've had with David who I've had for 8 months now, and her name's Jessica. She's a very good national level competitor. She got second at Nats a few times, just barely missed it. And I've had her for 8 months now. She looks incredible. She's in prep right now, and she just likes sending videos to hold herself accountable. Like she's like, I know that I'm like 6 weeks out right now and I'm leaner and you can see more in like my muscle fibers and what's activating through video. So I want to send you this to make sure because I'm deep in prep. I want to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong as like as I'm getting leaner and I'm lighter. And I'm like, awesome on you. Like we knew that you were hitting it right 4 weeks ago, but now you want to keep sending the videos because she knows at her experience level that I'm just sending these to hold myself accountable and to get you to look at it because I know I'm weaker right now. And I'm like, good on you. Like,
Yeah.
so there's some people just love to send all the videos and get all the feedback. Then some people I got to stay on. And I'm like, hey, last week I told you to hit this differently and you didn't send it to me this week. So how do I know you're doing it right? So there's
Yeah.
just different.
Oh yeah, that's definitely something that's necessary, is like holding the people accountable that do get
Yeah.
lazy
Yeah.
about it. And that's like probably the biggest thing I run into is like people get
Yeah.
lazy about it. And then what I've found that I get a lot less of than I did in the early parts of my coaching career is like, I want a new program, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Is like, if you're sending videos every week, you're getting constant
Yeah.
changes. So you're probably not
Yeah.
bored, but also you get to really see what the training program is like, why it was built the way it was built, because not only are you learning things early on in the program so you can master them quicker, but you can also then make progress
Yeah.
faster and enjoy that progress so much that you don't really want a new program because you want to continue
Yeah.
progressing
Exactly.
with the current one.
Oh, I will say this too, going back to your other question, because that you saying new program sparks a
Yeah.
light bulb in me. That's a big thing that I see, whether it's the client or the coach, is whether it's inexperience or it's boredom or whatever it is people changing their training programs too often. Like progression and just progression in general does not come from changing up your exercise routine every 4 weeks. And people just don't, there's just not a lot of
Yeah.
understanding behind that because they think that because I wrote down that I want to see 2 working sets at 12 reps, and well, 4 weeks later, I'm doing what I did 4 weeks ago, and it seems easier now. Okay, well, how can we improve on that? Let's slow the tempo down.
Make it
Let's
harder.
add some intensifier in there. Make it harder. Slow the tempo down. Add in a single drop set. Like do something that doesn't just mean throw weight on top of it. And they think that because they're maxing the stack on this machine that, oh, that's as far as I can go with it. I'm like, no, no, no. We could make this so much more optimal and so much harder on you that we could do half this stack and I can make it feel harder. And a lot of people just think that
Yeah.
it's that you constantly need to be changing your exercise and changing your program. I'm like, God, you guys got to give it like a 10 week minimum. I see some people will go for 6 months and they continue progressing. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. So with coaches that you work with in terms of like their clients, is it mostly the coach coming to you and saying like, "Hey, can you take this client's training over?" Or is it ever a client wanting to do that and maybe their coach, have you ever run into a time where a coach hasn't really wanted you to do that
So I've
or hasn't trusted
No,
you?
I
I
have
know you.
yet to ever run into a coach that doesn't trust me or doesn't know me in that regard. That could also be, and props to David for that, for bringing my training to light so quickly for me. Because like as a prep coach, I was like at the national level, a few pro cards, but when I decided to go all niche into training, David really took me in and was like, "Hey, I know how good you are at training. I'm going to give you all these people from a handful of national level girls up to a couple bikini pros he had." And he was like, "Work your magic. Let's see what we do." And then that word of mouth from them started to spread more and more and more. You add Brittany to the mix, and Brittany got me
Mhm.
20, 30 plus training clients just with her training with me. And so that kind of
Yeah.
took off to where all of the coaches I've now had, at least, like, and when I say all the coaches, like for everyone listening to this, it's like we're just talking, like, meaning the coaches that are at that level that we know about, like the Team Atlas, Kim Odo, Paul, Shane Hughley, those coaches. So I have clients from all of them, but now that trust is built. And now on occasion, it's the athlete coming to me. And I always say, I'm like, yeah, if your coach is cool with it, let me know and I'll take you on for training. Or it's the coach saying, hey, I have this athlete that I don't necessarily have time to develop this training for. This was her feedback from the judges, and can you take her on? I'm like, yep, let's do it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it goes back to that collaboration aspect of this industry being so important because like we can all do such a better job if we just ask for
yeah,
help sometimes and like always continue learning. Sometimes learning is like becoming better at training programming as a coach. Like for me, I'm always trying to do that. But then sometimes learning is just learning when you are really good at something, but maybe not as good at another thing, and you would benefit and your clients would
yeah,
benefit so much more by just passing off a part
yeah,
of it. And a lot of coaches have different opinions on that. Like they want everything
yeah.
all in house, and
I
that's
think a lot of
fine.
that,
Some people are really good at
I feel
that.
like a lot of that stems from, and some people will disagree with this, but a lot of it just stems from the psychology behind knowing that there's not many people that do one niche. There's not many people out there where you can say that's someone who only does training. That's someone who only does posing. Like I know posing coaches that are also prep coaches. And so I 100% agree with prep coaches being hesitant of sending their clients to that person, because how do you know that that person's going to have a good enough divide to where they can be professional enough to only do training and not ask any prep questions? Like you're going into peak week and you see your posing coach who's also a prep coach, and they start asking you questions about what you're doing during your peak week or stuff that they don't need to know about as a posing coach. That's where those like barriers go up of coaches not wanting to refer out. And so I think that when it comes to me, like everyone knows I'm just training. And like use Paul and Hughley for example. I have people that come to me for coaching, and I have sent Paul and Shane a handful of prep clients. Like Bailey, Buff Bay, Figure Pro Bailey.
Oh
So
yeah,
Bailey,
she's competing this
yes,
weekend,
yeah,
right?
at the LA Pro in Los
Yeah,
Angeles. So she came.
yeah.
She's been my training client for 2 years now. I've had her through now three coaches. When she left her last coach last year, she was like, "Do you think you could just prep me?" And I was like, "I will help you in the interim, just because I've had you for a year and a half now." I was like, "I'll keep you going. Here's macros to follow. I had referred her out to a wellness clinic for that type of stuff, and so." I was like, let's find you a good, reliable coach, though. And I literally texted Shane and I was like, hey, I'm not sure if you know Bailey, if you followed her, but I want to send her to you for prep coaching. I do her training. And he goes, I know her, incredible shape. You want to send her to me? I'm like, yep, let's do it. And he's had her ever since, and they've had
Yeah.
an incredible short off season and incredible prep this year. She got, I think, third place at Wasatch in her first show with him. And this weekend, I'm not going to like knock on wood, but I am projecting her to win this weekend. So should
That's
be
dope.
good.
Yeah, she has an incredible
Yeah.
shape. I'm excited. Yeah, I think that's a really important part of like establishing what you're doing is just like really showcasing that to the people, to the coaches that you're working
Yeah,
with, and also just like them knowing and having confidence in you because like, oh, well, this other coach who like, yeah, they're my competitor, but like they trust him, so I'm sure he's
yeah,
cool, right? I think that's a really good thing to just like obviously establish right from the get-go, but also having the track record helps
yeah,
too,
yeah.
and you just have to build
Yeah,
that over
that's yeah,
time.
yeah, that's one of those things where it's like when it comes down to it, like if someone asks me the question of how do you get into this niche, how do these coaches just send you people? It's like literally time is the answer. I had one coach who I've been
Yeah,
friends with for a while where when he found out I was just doing training, he took the leap with me, and that solely is the reason that now every single coach sends clients to me. So everyone's journey to
yeah.
get to their
Sometimes all
point,
you need is one
yeah,
person.
everyone's journey to get
Yeah,
to a certain point is going to be different. Like I can't tell someone who wants to be a trainer and like wants to like take after my footsteps. I can't be like, oh, you have to know someone who's going to like take that leap with you, and then everyone will want to use you after that. Like everyone's going to be different.
yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people like when they ask you for advice for something like that, I've experienced this myself, like just since going off on my own, starting my own business, like people see your success and they like something in their brain tells them it's like an overnight
Yes.
success. When really like you started by training people for
Yeah.
free. I did the
Yeah.
same thing. And that was like in
Yep.
2019. And I didn't actually start coaching publicly until
Yeah.
2021. So like that's a big part of it. I think a lot of people miss when they want to have success similar to you is just they definitely don't want to hear it because they don't see all of the work
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
behind that.
Yeah. That's a huge thing when it comes to trainers, when it comes to posing coaches, prep coaches, is a lot of people will have like they turn pro. The next day, they're taking on prep clients. And it's like, you've been with it. Like, I understand it. It's marketing purposes, but what have you done to showcase that you can do this? Like, what have you done to show that you can work with someone and do this where you're going to take $250 a month from them and bring them to the stage when all you did was follow your coach's plan and made yourself look good, which was your coach's plan you were following.
Yeah.
Like, what did, and so going back to like how you and I both start,
You're just good at following
exactly,
directions and
exactly.
suffering.
Like you and I, like you just said, we started out doing a handful of people for free. Like I still have one of those clients I did for free. He's a lifestyle client now. He does done competing, but I still have one of those clients I took on for free. And I think back to that day, and I still don't charge him because he's one of the ones that like got me all the way here. Like when he did compete, we took fourth place in open in men's physique at the Fresno Classic in California, and that was the first ever person I put on stage. And to this day, I look back on that and I'm like, we did pretty good together. My first competitor ever, fourth in open. I'm like, that got me to here today. I'm like, so I think back on that, and when people, you're right when you say that people don't want to hear about that part of it. It's like, yeah, I did a 6 month off season, a 4 month prep with him, almost an entire year completely free, and that was also in person training because he was in my city, and I didn't charge him. And it's like, and that's the work you have to put in to get to build up that portfolio to be able to market yourself. And I don't want to call it the easy route. Like I'm not a pro, so I can't sit there and say this in any regard, but it is a very easy marketing route to turn pro, and that's the reason you start prepping people. It's like there's no work in it to build up an actual client portfolio to prove you can do this. Like you just said, you're really good at putting in the work for yourself and following a plan. Like you look incredible on stage for yourself. But what did you ever do to start charging people $300 a month to prep them?
Yeah. Well, I think too, like you say, it's really easy as a marketing tactic. Like, yes, it is, but I think what a lot of those people sometimes find is that it's actually a lot harder than it looks
Yes.
to get clients and keep them coming
Yeah.
in because after the fanfare of going pro and being shredded falls
Hmm.
away, you have to actually understand how
Yeah.
marketing works and how coaching works because you can't just quit your day job and assume that like, oh, because I'm a pro, I'm going to get all these clients. Like that's not how
Yeah.
it works. And especially as you go throughout your pro career and maybe don't do as
Yeah.
well, like that's also something that you have to consider is like some people if you have clients strictly because you're a pro, then that means as soon as another pro comes along that is shiny and looks like
Yep.
they and it does the right thing, they're going to
Yeah.
leave. that's a fair weather
Yeah.
client, whatever the term
Yes.
is. So I feel like the best way to market yourself, whatever industry or part of the industry you're in, is always like being yourself and like letting your actions speak.
Yeah.
Because like client testimonials, client posts, training stuff, like everything that you're doing, like showcasing your results rather than looking at like, look at what I can
Yeah.
do, because what you can do with your coach is very different than what you can do with
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah. And speaking on, and this weekend coming up is actually, speaking of marketing, this is the biggest weekend I've had upcoming since going full on into trading. So I'm excited for this weekend. I don't know if you saw my stories I put up, but it's a 5 show weekend for bikini pros. So there's
Oh,
Vancouver,
in terms of your clients
yeah,
competing.
so there's Vancouver, there's Atlanta Pro, there's Republic of Texas, there's Taiwan, and there's Netherlands. And all of them are bikini pro shows. And I have 1 to 2 people that I don't want to call them clients, but were either on my training tour where I did like a weekend with them, or like Rhoda, for example, who I actually did program, Brittany. So I have 5 people. So 4 out of those 5 shows I have people in. And they're good level. Like they're second, third, fourth place level. So I'm really excited to see if how many Olympia qualifications come about this weekend.
That's
Yeah,
really
it'll be a fun
cool.
one.
So with that, do you ever or have you ever had kind of imposter syndrome about what you're doing and what you can do with it?
Yeah, yes. In the more so in the beginning of like going full on into training, I felt like I brought up my prep coaching the right way. Like I got on stage a couple times. I was decent. I competed in the WFF. I don't know if you know that federation. When Lee Priest got like banned from the IFBB, he went to the
Yeah,
WFF.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I
So I
know.
was in the military when I started competing, and there wasn't much NPC international at the time. And so I did my first show in the WFF, and then when I moved back to America, or I came back to America after the show, and after I got out of the military, I stayed with the WFF. Did the Lauren Powers Classic in Long Beach, California. So I did 3 shows with them, and that's who I did all my shows through. And I was like, this. So I've done a few competitions. I had Sergio as my coach. I'm like, I felt like I got high level coaching. I know what this is about. Like that's when I went into prep coaching and I felt like I went about it the right way, like we discussed. So I never really had imposter syndrome with that. When it came to training, I felt like that was more so along the lines of like, in my head, people could be like, oh, well, who's this guy that's training all these bikini pros all of a sudden and is like taking credit for this and that? And like, anyone that follows me knows that any post I make, I always tag the prep coach because I never want people to think that this is like my client. Like even if it's just a picture, like me and Bailey did a photo shoot for her supplement company the other day for Peak Week and we were training and has nothing to do with her prep coach. We're doing a training session. And even when I reposted on my story, I tagged Shane down in the corner. So like I like to always like
Yeah,
this is the prep coach, like this is who their coach is because yeah, exactly. So I always alleviate that side of things that makes it seem like I'm the one doing all this work with them. But on like the more imposter side of things, I feel like it's gone down a lot, but it took a while to get over that hump of like, yeah, like what have I ever done? I'm not a female for one. Like my niche is in the female division and I'm not a girl. And then on top of that, it's like, where did I come about to have all these bikini clients? Most of my prep clients were men over the years, with a handful of figure girls.
mhm.
And so I just fell into this niche of training and I feel like I don't even know how to describe it. There was a little of that imposter syndrome, but it's gone away with results, really. Like as I built that portfolio, as I've had a handful of people turn pro, I've had 2 people qualify for the Olympia now this year. So it's like when it gets to that level, I'm like, okay, I feel like I worked with this person for 6 months. It wasn't just like I took them on for 2 weeks. I'm like, I did this person's training program.
Can't be
Yeah,
afraid.
I'm like, I took on this person's training program for
Yeah,
6 months, then they qualify for the Olympia. I don't feel like an imposter for being like, hey, I do take a little bit of credit for that. So it's part of
yeah,
once you when it's time. Once you do it for long enough and have the results and can showcase the results, that's when I feel like that you get over that hump of feeling like, yeah, what am I doing here? And that also goes back to like the on the men's side of things and just on the training side of things in general, I feel like a lot of people can look at someone and be like, oh, well, he doesn't compete anymore. He never turned pro. What's he know about the training side of things? And I got over that hump of things when I get put through hell with some of the people that I train with. which is over the last year. Like this Sunday, I'm training with Hollingshead this weekend in at the Euro
Oh,
show,
awesome.
and that's going to be hell. Like it's in that's that level of intensity that a lot of people don't understand being able to tap into, that I correlate over into being able to train people efficiently. Obviously, there's not a lot of like bikini
Yeah.
girls that I'm burying into the ground. I want them to like limp out of the gym at the end of the day. But like in the last year, I've trained with Hunter, I trained with Beef Stew, I'm training with James next week, and getting a lot of those Olympian, arguably some of the strongest people in our entire industry to lift with and train with. That just gives me an entire another appreciation and knowledge and insight as to this end of the spectrum of intense training, and then working with the bikini Olympians on this side of things, and being able to kind of correlate the two to where it's like, this is extreme
Yeah.
intensity, this is extreme detail. Now, how can I like turn this into a program that's going to work really well?
Yeah. I think, and that what you just said too just points to the importance of like surrounding yourself with people that are either better
Yeah.
than you or can show you
Mm-hmm.
something you can learn from.
100%.
And that's like something I think a lot of people honestly like
Yeah.
avoid, especially if they're at the
Yep.
top. Is like once they've reached a certain level, like, okay, I don't have imposter syndrome anymore. I'm fucking good at this. I don't need to learn
Yeah.
from anybody.
Yeah.
And that can be a really
Yeah.
slippery
Yeah.
slope because it means that you're no longer going to evolve with the industry that is
Yep.
constantly evolving.
Yeah.
If you, the dog just like moved my chair. You're no longer evolving, and like change is the only constant in life. So you need to be able to change, and just like sometimes it's changing your mind, sometimes it's changing who you
Yeah.
trust and who you work with. But that's just such an important part of coaching and
Yeah.
competing on both sides
Yeah.
of it.
And there's
And
like
I keep seeing,
there's things I'll take from everything too, like you just said. Like the second you stop trying to learn, like it doesn't mean that you need to always have imposter syndrome and feel like, oh, I need to keep looking up and see what I gotta do. You will get over that hump eventually. That's for everyone listening. New coaches, new people competing, you'll get over that hump. But when it comes to always striving to learn and better yourself, like I remember I trained with Hunter last year when we were in Seattle together, and it still is in my mind to this day how it trained or how it changed some of my unilateral training. Is we were doing single arm cable rows, heavy as shit, and he told me he finished up his set with his right arm, and he stood up and he goes, "Go," and I was like, "Go? You're not gonna do your other side?" He was like, "No, if I have a training partner, I will give myself their entire set to rest from my left side so that I'm completely not fatigued, my heart rate's
sure,
down, endurance is back up." I'm like, I never thought of that. And I was like, and at that point in time, I was like I've had a dozen pros that I've trained and have turned pro, and I'm like, and I never thought of that. So now I implement that when I do have
yeah,
men, or I have someone doing a very intense set, split squats, for instance. That's an
oh yeah,
area where I'll like put a little sub bullet in there of, hey, check your heart rate and how fatigued you're feeling before you go into this side, because it clicks in my head that especially split squats, that could cause an imbalance. If you're going, you got a 50-pound dumbbell in your hand with a bikini girl and she's hitting her right side, and she goes immediately into her left side, drops it, pick up the other foot, go right into your left foot, go right into your left quad. It's like that's how you can cause an imbalance, because you're not going to have that same amount of drive that you just had with the initial set. So that stuck with me ever since he said that to me, and I was like, so it's just one of those things where I take those notes and those little cues like that, and I'm like, I need to implement that because that makes a lot of sense. So
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Is there anyone specifically that you have looked up to a lot in terms of like your niche and what you do and how you learn?
so I study Hani a ton, and it's funny because the people that know Hani and like his style of training, because he dates all the way back to like '90s, early 2000s. Like he had Jay, so it's like, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So people that have like listened to some of his videos and his channel and just know how he trains. I have people that I will send a program to, and after a few days of them doing the program, they're like, "Man, your shit's really similar to like Hani and like the stuff I watch on his YouTube." I'm like, "Yeah, it is," because I like take a lot of what he says and kind of implement it into the realm of bikini. And it's like I like to do a lot of the like
Hmm.
fascial stretch training, like the FST style training, and I like to really do the volumized
Yeah.
training, keep things volumized, because when you're working again, like you said earlier, when you're working with a certain level, like you get to that top national level or you're a pro level, and you're not necessarily, your feedback isn't much more to grow. Like you're not trying to get bigger everywhere. Oftentimes we're just trying to, especially deeper in prep, we're there for expenditure and to get the blood flowing. We're not 4 weeks out of a show and we're trying to push a ton of weight and grow at that point in time. So that's where certain training methods that I've studied over time really come into play. That's where you do a lot of those like banded rest periods, like the take lateral raises for instance, where someone does like the 15 reps of lateral raises and they go immediately into like the 30 seconds of pulse reps with the band. And it's really just volumizing, getting that blood flow into the muscle. And I like a lot of that style of training, especially on the bikini side of things, because I'm really big on exercise sequencing. So being able to take the first exercise and have that collaborate properly with the next exercise, take someone that doesn't have good glute engagement, for example, and using that first exercise as one that really pre-engages and almost fatigues the glutes to the point where the next one you could do it wrong and you're still going to feel it in your glute. So being able to use the previous exercise in correlation with the next one to continue to compile on top of it, that's a big method of my training style.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Cool. Well, I'm excited for you. I'm
Thanks.
excited for you this
Yeah.
weekend with all
Yeah, it'll be
pros.
fun.
I think this will be released in about a month,
Okay.
so I'm predicting by that time, Brittany's definitely going to
Yeah,
be
Brittany needs to be
qualified. So
qualified.
celebrate the
In
fact.
fact, you know Tiana, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
making her season appear, her first show this weekend. She's doing Vancouver against Ashley Kay, so that'll be a fun
Awesome.
one.
She has a great
Yeah.
physique. I'm
Yeah,
excited to see her, especially.
she's only,
Does she have a new coach
yeah,
too
she
this
went to
season?
Adam with Team Elite Physique. Yeah,
Okay.
so she's with Adam now.
Yeah.
So Adam has her and Ashley in the show, which is really cool for him. But yeah, that'll be a good one. So
Yeah.
I trained Tiana for a weekend on my tour. We did like 4 hours together over a couple days. So I'm really excited to see her up there. Um, Rhoda is doing Atlanta, Jazzy's doing Atlanta, and then Brittany overseas in Netherlands. So it's a fun one. Be a good weekend.
Yep. I'll get
Yeah,
qualified.
right. Yeah. What are you before we
All
hop
right.
off?
Well, thank you
What
so
are you
much.
doing? Are you prepping?
Oh, what
Yeah,
show
are
am I
you
doing?
prepping right now? What are we
Yeah,
doing?
I am prepping right
Okay.
now. So I haven't like nailed down like the actual show. I'm not like talking about the exact one, but obviously it's a fall show and there's not that many figure pro shows. So I'm targeting kind of fall,
Okay.
winter, September through
Yeah.
November. Um, one that I definitely want to do is the November 9th Texas State
Oh,
Pro
okay.
Open.
Yeah.
And that's one that I actually did last
Okay.
season in 2021, and so it'll be a very different physique.
Yeah.
I'm
That'd be
excited
good to see.
to put those side by side, but
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah, it's been a long
Looking
time
forward to it.
coming. I'm excited.
Are you guys going to be at
Yeah.
Texas Pro in a few weeks? Okay.
Yes,
We'll be
we will.
there.
Me and Austin are going to be there. I have a client competing at the In
Okay.
Bikini
Awesome.
Amateur, and then I know Paul is going
Yeah.
to be there with all his
Yep.
crew. So yeah, it'll be a
Yeah,
fun
we'll
time.
be there. Gasp is doing their homecoming that week, and Brittany's actually moving from Florida to Idaho that week. So we're doing, yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah. So
exciting.
we're doing
Is she competing too?
No, so we're just making it a part of like the road trip of I'm picking her up in Florida that Tuesday, and then we're gonna stay in Dallas from Thursday through the Texas Pro. And Gasp is doing their whole
Nice.
like go shooting at Branch's house and have dinner at Michael's house. They're doing that whole thing that week. Texas Pro Saturday, and then we'll hit the road again Sunday. So yeah,
Dope.
that'll be fun.
That's a cool
Yeah, it'll
week.
be fun. Really fun.
Yeah. Well, I will see you
Yes.
there, and thank you so much for being
Yeah, thanks
on.
for having
I
me.
will put all of your information, how to reach you, how to work with you in the show notes, and I'll do a social post as
Awesome.
well for it. So
Hang on, let me get a screenshot so I can
I'll
put
see
this
you
on my
later.
story. I gotta get it. Oh wait, is this not gonna turn again for me? Oh well, I'll put it this way. All right, ready?
I don't know.
There we go. All right, sweet. I will see you later.
Cool.
Have a
All
good
right,
one.
sir. Thank you so much.